This is Immortal Works Flash Fiction Friday, Episode 24, 15 Minutes to Midnight. Written and read by Daniel Swenson. A thick fog clung to the outside shell of the Chicago Central Station as a worried and disheveled old man entered through an unlocked side door. Normally this door would be locked at this time of night, but earlier he had traded his good shoes to one of the day janitors to leave it open. He was running out of time. The man wore an old, ragged trench coat, was in his late 50s, with long, silvery, unkempt hair, and walked with a noticeable limp that was from a sports injury he had suffered earlier in his life and spending too many nights living out on the streets. He talked to himself as he bumbled his way through the building, incoherent of what he was doing. He continued to mumble over and over, "It's coming. It's coming for me. It's coming." For the last 5 nights he'd come to the station, meandering through, hoping to find someone willing to listen. Instead, he'd been chased away by the station master each of the previous nights, after accosting several of the individuals waiting for their train to arrive. The few individuals that would listen to the crazed old man would curiously ask him what was coming for him. He would then clutch his head as he cried out in pain, "I've done something bad. I killed a man that had swindled me out of millions. I hid his body in a nearby lake, and now I'm going to pay." The old man tripped over something on the floor and went down hard. As he climbed to his feet, he noticed a young woman in her 20s that was sitting on a bench, waiting, and doing something on her cell phone. The voice in his head echoed painfully in his ears. "This is your final chance. There is 15 minutes until midnight. You must find someone and confess your sin to them here and now. And they must forgive you. If they do not, then I will send my train to collect your soul." "No!" the old man screamed as he darted out from behind the lockers. He ran with wide-eyed terror across the open plaza of the station, screaming, "It's coming! It's coming for me! It's coming!" The station master heard the cries of the desperate man and tumbled from his comfortably plushed chair as he unsuccessfully tried to untangle his feet and give chase. He swiped the whistle from his breast pocket and started to blow on it in a warning as he began to chase the man down. The young woman looked up from her phone at the sound of the whistle and noticed for the first time the crazy old man that was running towards her. Concerned, she thrust her hand into her purse and pulled out a can of pepper spray. "Stay back," she yelled as she defiantly held the shaking can before her. "Stay back or I'll hit you with my pepper spray, you pervert." "It's coming for me," the old man yelled as he continued forward. "I must confess my sin to you or it will come for me." "Get away from me," she screamed, a moment before releasing a spray of pepper mist into the old man's direction. The old man cried out in pain as the noxious substance hit his face and eyes. The burning sensation tore through his feeble senses and only seemed to force his desperation to a new level. He desperately dove for her purse, trying to keep her from fleeing. The young woman sidestepped and kicked the older man hard in the stomach as he tried to lunge at her. He quickly recovered, spun around, and grabbed her purse, pleading for her to listen. The two played tug-of-war with her purse before she sprayed him another time. He crumpled to the floor in agony. Finally, the station master arrived, and the woman bolted away, leaving behind her phone. The station master scooped up the phone and dropped it into one of his pockets. Sighing, he bent down and roughly pulled the man to his feet. He could tell the man's face had been burned by the woman's pepper spray as the angry red welts began to show. He started to drag the old man out of the main plaza and away from the other waiting passengers. "You again," the station master hissed. "How many times do I have to kick your crazy butt out of this place?" They stumbled along a few more steps before the old man crumpled to the floor in pain, mumbling something incoherently. The station master looked around, gauging who was around. The other employees had already gone home for the evening. With the exception of a few individuals waiting for the last train home, they were the only ones left. He gingerly knelt down beside the old man and pulled out his wallet. "Listen here. I think you've suffered enough at the lady's hands. Here's a few bucks. Go get yourself something warm to eat and don't complain. And for the love of God, please don't come back." Because if you do, I'm gonna have to call the police." The old man stared back at the tracks through swollen eyes before beginning to shake violently. The station master grabbed hold of the convulsing man on the floor to try to prevent him from hurting himself. He watched as the old man's eyes rolled up into his head and spoke in a deep, gravelly voice. "The express train for hell is coming for my soul. I'm running out of time. You must believe me." "Oh, hell," the station master sputtered as he dodged a swinging arm. "Why didn't I stay home like my wife asked? I could be home in bed with her instead of dealing with this crap." Several minutes passed as the old man thrashed about on the floor, muttering several unintelligible things. The station master did his best to hold the man down, but the old codger was stronger than he looked. The station master took several hits to his chest and arms as the old man flailed. Unfortunately, one of those strikes caught him off guard and knocked him to the floor. The old man bolted upright, got his feet under him, and ran for another passenger. The time was 2 minutes to midnight, and at that moment a long whistle blew, once, then twice. The station master was startled. The next train wasn't due until 12:05. He looked down at his pocket watch to check the time. It was 11:58. The old vagrant started screaming when he heard the whistle. The station master could hear the roar and chug, as well as the wheeze of a steam engine, approaching fast. Approaching too fast to stop at the station by his estimation. The old man walked up to the edge of the platform, staring down the tracks in frozen terror. The station master ran forward, grabbing a hold of him, hoping to pull him away, out of fear that he'd jump in front of the impending train. The train whistle sounded again moments before a rush of superheated air blew against the two men. The station master heard the roar of an invisible train echo in his ears as it passed directly in front of him. He heard the hiss of the steam and the screech of the flanges against the iron rails. He felt the wind whip at his long handlebar mustache, but he saw nothing. Beneath his grip, the old codger gave a terrible, pain-filled wail. Then he faded into nothingness, leaving the station master empty-handed. The roar of the train faded into the distance and then ceased. The station master glanced over at the station clock. It was midnight. He then turned and stared blankly down the tracks. Around him, the remaining passengers were gasping and murmuring in fright. Good Lord, he was right, he thought. It did come for him. He pulled a handkerchief out of his back pocket and began desperately wiping his sweating bald head. A moment later, a trembling man standing nearby approached. "Sir, what in the world was that?" he asked. "Son," the station master said, "I believe that was the express train to hell." With as much calm as his frazzled nerves could muster, he looked back down the tracks before shaking his head in disbelief. This seemed to bring him back to his senses. "I'm sure it's been a long day for you. Why don't you go drop by the Legacy Club and order yourself a drink," he suggested to the trembling man. "Tell Marco over there to put it on my tab." He pointed over the man's shoulder towards the club and smiled. The man hesitantly turned and wandered off. The station master turned to address the rest of the dazed and frightened crowd. "Nothing to worry about, folks," he said. "It was just an express train passing through. The next train will be here in 5 minutes." The station master's reassuring manner calmed everyone. One by one, they slowly turned back away from the empty tracks and settled back into their seats, whispering to each other about the strange events that had just taken place. The station master looked back at the tracks once more before heading back to his office. When he arrived, he closed the door, dropped the lady's phone into the lost and found box, and poured himself a stiff drink to help calm his nerves. "Well, that's one for the books," he muttered as he sat down on his stool. He took a sip of his drink as he looked over at the schedule on the wall. "I wonder if I should put it on the schedule. 12 a.m., express train to hell." Shaking his head, he fortified himself with one more brandy and then went back to work. Thanks for listening. If you have a story 500 to 1500 words, send it to submissions@immortal-works.com.